Welcome to Pop Monster, a podcast to feed all your pop culture cravings. My name is Sarah, a self-confessed superfan. This show will cover everything from reality TV chaos, nostalgic deep dives, and the latest in music, TV, movies, and books. So let's get into it. We're now at week 3 of MAFS Australia, and it is Intimacy Week. Now, maybe it's the gloomy weather we've been having in the UK, but I found this week a bit of a slog until we got to that horror show of a dinner party. Maybe it's me. I've been feeling a bit low this week. I've tried using one of the seasonal depression UV lights, but that broke me out in a huge rash of hives, and the doctor said I might be allergic to light. Yeah, so that was a low point, and I'm basically the Phantom of the Opera. Now, to try and make myself feel better, and I'm someone who desperately needs their sleep like Julia, but I've been making myself get up at 6 a.m. so I can go for a walk before work and listen to some comedy podcasts. So I've been doing everything I can in my power to feel better, but some of MAFS this week was a bit of a downer. We're seeing multiple couples suffering with the exact same situation, where one of them is not into the other and they're being vague and lying as they don't want to look bad and they probably want to stay on TV. We're seeing this with Rachel and Steven, Grayson and Julia, Rebecca and Steve, and Brooke and Chris. I find this lack of transparency possibly even worse than how Mel was handling this situation. Now, I'm not saying she couldn't have at least tried to be friends with Luke and given him the humane treatment outlined in the Geneva Convention, but at least Luke knew exactly where he stood with her. So, a quick disclaimer before we get into this week. Now, I've held some quite strong opinions on some of the people on this show, and I fluctuate. I can admit when I'm wrong, and I do go back and forth. The last couple of weeks, I thought Danny's a dickhead. Then I thought I would die for this man, and now I'm undecided but kind of ticking a bit closer to dickhead. I will change my mind on people. Never Steve. Never change my mind on Steve. I hate that fucker. Alright, so let's get into Monday's episode for week 3. So that starts us with the night after the horrific red flag, green flag task. Now, something I love on the show is when, after the couples have been split up by gender for these tasks, they get back together to gossip about everything and all the other couples. So the aftermath of this is basically all the women being horrified by Brooke's awful behaviour and the men being shocked by Steve's. Now, speaking of that snake in a human suit, otherwise known as Steve, he comes back to Rebecca acting like nothing has happened after this task and like he didn't completely decimate her character in that task. Now, this isn't Rebecca's first rodeo. She has good intuition. Her intuition is telling her that this isn't the full story and she needs to trust her gut. And that takes us into the commitment ceremony day. So we get a getting ready montage for it. Stella is dressed like she's in Clueless. Gia has her signature peekaboo boob keyholes. Brooke is a monster, but she looks stunning, like a 90s supermodel with a bouncy blowout, and she's wearing a Canadian tuxedo. She looks great. And Julia, I love what Julia is wearing. She is dressed like a businesswoman in Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion. So something I need to ask from watching this montage is, can I just check how many spritzes of fragrance people are doing? Because when they're getting ready, it always looks like they're absolutely dousing themselves in perfume. And I do 6 sprays every day, which I think is possibly almost definitely overkill. So yeah, what's your number? How many spritzes are you doing? Now, before we get to this commitment ceremony, we do see little bits of Gia and Scott and Beck and Danny being adorable. And we see Stella still reeling and very bothered by Brooke's comments in yesterday's challenge. Now, Brooke. Oh, Brooke. So in that task, these women were absolutely plastered. And I thought that Brooke would wake up with some anxiety after acting like a hellion, regret everything she did. But no, she just doubles down on calling Stella and Alyssa fake bitches. We learn here that Stella and Philip are neighbours with Brooke and Chris. And I like knowing this information. Okay, I need a full floor map of where everyone is located in that lovely building with the Taco Bell. I need to know where they are at all times. I need the Marauders map from Harry Potter. Something I love before the ceremony starts is how they all start kissing each other like they're on the Titanic and it's about to go down. Like, they're all scared for what's going to happen. So I'll just go through couple by couple of what the outcome was of this ceremony. First up, we have Mel and Luke. Now, I was surprised to see these two up first. I thought they definitely have to be leaving. I thought these two would be saved, for near the end at least. Honestly, I've never seen more disheveled and sad people. They just, it's sad. And Mel does a lot of her little sad, pouty baby face and spins her usual bullshit that I can't listen to anymore about wanting an instant fairy tale but being let down by Luke being late to the wedding because of the whole ring fiasco and then him chewing gum throughout the ceremony. Luke talks about how he's tried to stay positive and make it work on a friend's level with Mel, but he struggled because he could feel her pushing him away, and he's got eyes. He can see the clear disdain that she has for this man. Like, she hates him. Now, John, bravo, John. I will allow you to be called an expert today. John is just spitting hard truths at Mel. He tells her that she needs a wake-up call and that MAFS isn't about fairy tales, and she's doing what has kept her single this whole time. Bravo, John. 1 million roses for John, smoochies for John. Great job. So after that reality check, and realising that she's not going to be portrayed as the victim in this scenario, Mel does show a little remorse for how she's been treating Luke. We then get to the decisions. So Luke writes stay. And this made me lose a bit of sympathy for him. Like, fair enough, you're committed, but man, just run. Why did he say stay? And no surprises here, Mel wrote leave. Regardless, they'll be here the following week because, yeah, you're held hostage. Next up is Gia and Scott. There isn't much to say about these two. I mean, I found them really cute and they can't stop boning. I truly thought that they were going to jump each other on the sofa in front of the experts. They were fully in a pretzel where their legs were intertwined over each other. Like, that couldn't be me with my restless legs. Like, I need to fully always be shaking them. But they've at least got sexual chemistry. Then we have Beck and Danny, less so on the sexual chemistry, and Beck talks a lot about their honeymoon issues with all of that and how they've had a rough start, but their Revelations week has been really transformative for them, and they both choose to stay. And now, when they go back to sit down, Beck makes a point of loudly saying to Gia that it's not fake. These two ladies, they're just so focused on each other. They're our heated rivalry. I'll say it again. Next up, we have Rachel and Steven. So in this ceremony, these two are so awkward and adorable. They talk a bit more about the issues they were having in their honeymoon and how Revelations Week has also brought them closer. And they both got really emotional, and I got emotional when they're talking about how they watched each other's audition tapes and saw each other talk about their body image issues. And I really like that they can connect with each other about this and have each other as like a sounding board. And they both could stay. No big surprise. That takes us to my nemesis, Steve, and the lovely Rebecca. So Steve, he's trying to spin a web and control everything. And he tries to make out that everything is perfect with their connection. And after the red flag, green flag task yesterday, the men look so baffled by this. And I was pretty disappointed that not one of them pulled him up on this, because it was insane that he's just brushing that aside. Alessandra asks Rebecca about how it's been for her after being single for so long. I think she said she was single for 8 years. And bloody Steve, he tries to answer for her. Like, he will not let a woman speak. And he's infuriating. Rebecca says that they have a rock-solid foundation, but, after being single for so long, she wants to find a person and to feel affection and desire. And she's attracted to Steve. She's made that clear. He's her silver fox, but she feels he hasn't been romantic enough since the wedding and honeymoon, and worries that he only sees her as a friend, and her big fear is rejection. Now, Pinocchio Steve says he's a slow burner, but does feel attraction and is open to exploring. Yeah, he's a liar, and I don't believe people in general on dating shows when they say they're slow burner. Like, fair enough if you don't want to be instant shagging, but I feel like often it's an excuse for I don't fancy you. I feel people shouldn't be forced into physical contact, but I feel like he's just using it as a cop-out and is waiting for something better to come along. Okay, they both say stay. I'll move on, but I have some words for Steve later. Up next is Brooke and Chris. It's such a funny visual. Throughout this whole segment, Chris basically looks like he's 5 years old and has been taken into Principal John's office. Like, he knows he's done something wrong. And Brooke raises all the gross shit he said in this video. And Chris takes such little accountability here. And he's just saying that is because he's from a foodie environment. Not a good excuse. Anyway, Brooke wants to be on TV. So she says they do have a connection. Liar, another liar, and they both say stay. Okay, so finally we get a bit of screen time and a chance to see a bit more of Julia and Grayson's dynamic. So in the outfits that they're both wearing for this commitment ceremony, like these two both really commit to a look. I feel in these outfits, they look like the kind of couple who would have hot tub swinging parties with like a ninja slushy machine. They just give off a vibe. They talk a lot about building a friendship. And Alessandra basically calls them out on this and basically says this is not America's Next Top Best Friend. It seems like Grayson has been bottling up a lot of emotions and this man is ready to explode. He feels like he's putting in more effort than Julia and that everything has been about her. Okay, so this is just the start of the tipping point for these guys. We've seen none of this leading up to this moment. We've just seen them doing ecstatic dances. But regardless, they both say stay. But that kind of sets the tone for those two this week. Now, Alyssa and David, they're happy, yada, yada, yada. My highlight is Gia saying Alyssa sounds like an infomercial selling hair products desperately at 3 a.m. on your TV. Because it's accurate, but these women are being so harsh on Alyssa. I don't think she's faking it. I think she's just a bit irritating, but that's just her personality. Like, I don't think she's being fake. Naturally, both say stay. They've never been happier. Next is Stella and Philip. So I do agree that some of the stuff that we're told about them thinking of baby names and her sitting on his lap, I just don't like that. But it does seem a bit performative. But I don't know what Brooke's issue is. She is so incensed by this. Like, she has a personal vendetta against this couple. It's bizarre. And I feel like Brooke is just trying to cause drama. It's coming out of nowhere. It's just so unnecessary. And like, it's making me think that I was missing something here, but I don't think I am. But on that note, they need to have these cameras up more often regardless. I feel like we're only seeing half of what's going on. Like, I had no clue what was happening with Grayson and Julia until this commitment ceremony. Or there's so many things that happen off camera that we're missing and then we hear them reference. Anyway, they're so happy. They give full body massages to each other that last over an hour. Now, maybe I'm the lazy bitch, but don't their hands hurt? Like, I can give a little massage for like 5 minutes and then I'm like, yeah, that's enough. So it all goes to shit when Stella talks about protecting their relationship and their happiness, and it's basically calling out Brooke by saying not everyone is happy for them. Brooke absolutely loses her mind at this and is saying that Stella is trying to play the victim, and I don't know, she tries to make it like a group thing. We're like, oh, we didn't say that about you, when, you know, she was the instigator. Like, Brooke needs to stand on her own 2 feet here. No surprises, the final decision for Philip and Stella is to stay. And afterwards, Brooke is going nuclear. She keeps calling Stella a fool and a snitch. Stella starts crying, and to be fair, she has a bit of a tiny tears. She needs to cry, that girl. Throughout this, Chris just seems so terrified of Brooke, and I don't really blame him, but I think he's kind of attracted to how mean she is to him, I think. Brooke, I need to move on from this, but Brooke is just trying to manufacture drama consistently throughout this week. Her level of vitriol towards Stella is so fucking weird. At one point, Stella says they've only met each other 3 times. I mean, yeah, why does she care so much? I don't care this much about my close friends' relationships. Brooke is wild. Okay, moving on to the next episode, we are now officially in Intimacy Week. So our sexpert, Alessandra, will be hosting a workshop with all the brides, and then the brides will be planning their ideal fantasy night. Before this, there's a couple things worth noting. First, Mel and Luke meet up, they call a truce and shake hands and hope to improve things moving forward. I can't even visualize what that will look like, but that's what's going on with them too. And there's also an argument between Grayson and Julia. Now these two they're too soft. I don't even see how this became an argument. So Julia's being a bit of a baby after not getting enough sleep. And I must confess, I'm a baby too, and I get irrational after lack of sleep. Whenever I'm flying, I can't sleep, and then go on to have crying meltdowns while watching Central Intelligence starring Kevin Hart and The Rock and saying how it's the most beautiful film I've ever seen. So I get it, but she is whining that she's struggling so much, and oh, look at me, my hands are shaking. And this whole fight started because she's napping on the sofa while he's packing up in the bedroom. She asked him if he could do the packing later. They had a mildly passive-aggressive exchange, and now Grayson feels like he's walking on eggshells around her. These two are little bitches, like, maybe they're too sensitive for me. Alright, bridal workshop. So fresh from their fight, Julia shows up wearing the skin of the McDonald's mascot Grimace. It's a horrific outfit. You know Grimace, the little purple monster guy. He has that milkshake, tasted like blueberries. It was his birthday recently. I know too much about Grimace. Some of the ladies talk about how much they love boning their partners. Beck uses the word fanny flutters. And please, as a society, we need to stop saying this. Now, I'm not putting the blame squarely on Maura Higgins' shoulders, but I feel she was one of the starters of the fanny flutters phenomenon. And have you seen the news that Maura might be replacing Taylor Frankie Paul as the Bachelorette? I would watch the hell out of that season. I love to see Maura come for men. So throughout this workshop, it quickly becomes clear who are the big three couples who are going to be tested by this female fantasy night. And that is Rebecca and Steve, Julie and Grayson, and Rachel and Steven. So all this sex talk throws Rebecca over the edge because she can see how far behind her and Steve are. And she wants them to be further in the relationship. And she feels like she's shrinking herself, trying to make herself smaller because she's scared of being rejected by Steve. But I do love how much support Rebecca is getting from both Beck and Gia and all the women. It's nice when they come together. Julia shares about where she's at, but it's just a bunch of word salad. And I'm with the women. I have zero clue what this bird brain is talking about. She just speaks for the sake of speaking in like a lot of therapy terms. And even Alessandra is just like, okay, at the end, like she doesn't know what's going on. She's not taking this on. I can see why Grayson has such difficulty having any clarity with Julia because she's all over the place. Finally, Rachel is starting to feel rejected as she's only had a couple of bedtime pecks with Steven and she wants more. She says she wants an actual like full-on pash. So Intimacy Week is bringing out all the mess and I get such bad secondhand embarrassment and I found these fantasy nights pretty rough to watch. Every year I find them painful. We see Jay and Rebecca picking out some items together in a sex shop and I love this friendship. I like seeing the mums get together and Gia being a hype woman for Rebecca. Gia, she's an enigma to me. Sometimes I do see a really soft side to her, like in the sex shop with Rebecca or when she's around Scott, but I hate her friendship with Brooke. It makes both of them assholes. Okay, I need to take a sip of my drink before getting to Rachel and Steven, because this was a tough watch. So Rachel's fantasy is that he will kiss her and not peck her. She feels like he kisses her in the way that you would kiss your mum. And I'll say in his defense, I think he's attracted to his mum. Now, much respect to Rachel, I can tell that this woman is a crafter with her giant notebook. But she wants to create a Love Actually rom-com vibe and be blindfolded and hold up some placards with instructions. I feel, firstly, she probably needed to pick a less cumbersome notebook. She is really struggling to turn the pages when she has the blindfold on. And I really don't want to be judging anyone's fantasy, but a sign saying, "Kiss me, please," it's hard to watch. I feel she's selling herself short. The whole time, my stomach was in knots for her. I was so nervous for her. But I respect how she'll really put herself out there. And I like that she's testing if Steven can read. You really don't want to end up in a Leah Michelle situation. Next, she holds up a sign that says, "Will you kiss me now? In this moment, the kind of kiss that makes me feel something." Oh, Lord. So it hurt me to read this. I would rather get a letter from the Zodiac Killer. This was horrific. So Steven, he can't just kiss her, and he's not sure it would make her feel something. So poor Rachel, she's crying, and Steven admits that he's feeling more of a friend-roommate vibe with her. And to kiss someone, he needs to feel a romantic connection and a spark. So this made me feel like a slut, as I've never had all these qualifiers in order to kiss someone. Steven has much higher standards than me. Rachel is such an honest person. She says how she likes him and has lucid dreams about him grabbing and kissing her and how that excites her. This information could not be waterboarded out of me. On camera, off camera. She really hits the nail on the head with him when she says that he doesn't want to kiss her, but doesn't want to tell her directly that he's not physically attracted to her. I mean, she tries to ask him whether he is attracted to her, and he's just deflecting these questions like bullets in the Matrix. After all of this, Rachel is just gutted and she needs to move out and get some space, and she just fully breaks down. We see her getting comforted by one of the producers. It's a really hard watch. All right, I feel I can quickly get through some of these. Next up, we have Alyssa and David. So she dresses all sexy and makes him a salmon poke bowl. Now, I don't know if I could eat when someone's full ass is out. David can't tell if the food or her ass is for dinner. They do some more weird feet stuff. These two like the feet stuff. Next. So Gia and Scott, she's dressed like a Playboy bunny and wants him to wait on her hand and foot. Now, I'd say this one is the closest to my fantasy because she gets him to feed her some KFC chicken and he tells her she's hot. Perfect. I mean, I'd prefer Popeyes. I'm more of a Popeyes girl, but I do love the Colonel. These two then also do some weird feet rubbing. Next, I'm moving on. Now we have Julia and Grayson, and she wants to ask him some questions about his life as her fantasy, which is basically what they already do all the time with all the little question tasks they're given. I think Julia's full of shit. She's not for me. I died laughing for a good 10 minutes when they cut from Gian and Scott to the intimacy task between Julia and Grayson, and her asking Grayson if he was bullied at school. And this man is just sitting there wearing a beanie. These two are fucked. I also died when she asked him what he thought her superpower is, and this idiot says, like, can he fly or something? Amazing, Grayson. So Grayson is rightfully disappointed, as this was a chance to build romance, and he feels like he's in the friend zone. Julia is oblivious. She's loving this, and she says it has given her a mindgasm. And hearing her say mindgasm reminded me that Julia has some bullshit scammer job. Like, I think she's a charisma or confidence coach. Apologies to all of the life coaches out there. But yeah, I'm not buying it. Ugh, remember when these two got no screen time? So Grayson tries to raise his concerns, and he's very direct in asking if she sees a future with him, if she has any attraction to him. But Julia just keeps throwing back more of this therapy jargon like lean in and emotional safety and safe spaces. So he can't get any clarity from this. She can't give him a yes or a no. Now, we know Philip also does coaching work, and I've made it clear I don't think he would make a great cult leader. On the other hand, I think Julia has all the great makings of one. I think she could be a mother god type, and she has the hair for it. Just something to think about. Anyway, we're leaving these two in a bad spot. For Mel and Luke's date, they play mini golf, and this is a date I'd actually want to do. It's the only sport I'm good at, and I'm using the term sport loosely. I think it's a good low-stakes date for them. Recently I did mini golfing, and it had these giant bunnies on the course. It was great, and this place that they're at also looks awesome. They got to golf in the Simpsons kitchen, and we get to see these two get along, and maybe I'm a terrible person and preferred it when they hated each other. Or maybe it's just a shock to my system. It's too much change too fast. It's bizarre seeing them tolerate each other, but good progress for them. So we have quite a few painting-related fantasies. Brooke and Chris have to paint each other. Now, she is a mad woman. She gives no fucks for adding in his dead dog to the artwork. Her art isn't good, but she does capture his black, soulless eyes. And Chris's picture is legit really good. Like, he has some artistic talent. Then we have Stella asking Philip to paint her like one of his French girls. He says he might not be able to leave the table for natural reasons. Sir, I don't want to think about your boner. He does a painting for her, and it looks like Aunt Gladys from Weapons. I would say that the best art date was Beck and Danny's. They blindfold each other and paint words associated with things they like about each other on each other's bodies. And it was very cute. And Danny, he came in with a really great attitude because I can relate. He likes to make a joke and deflect with humor, but he kind of cut back on this in order to respect her fantasy. And he gets very emotional. And I thought this was really lovely. I thought this was a great fantasy idea. Less lovely is Rebecca and Steve. So after Rebecca went to the sex shop earlier with Gia, she wants to put on the sexy business lady outfit she purchased. When she talks to Steve about it, he says that he'd rather she didn't because he's too conservative, and she's disappointed because he is not trying and saying it's about them finding their own speed. It's all on Steve's speed all the time. She knows he's full of shit, And I agree with her. You have 4 kids, Steve. We all know you fucked. So the drama from Rebecca and Steve's fantasy night spills into the next episode, where we see that this task has started an argument. So in this argument, he accuses her of being here for the wrong reasons and that she has ulterior motives. I absolutely don't believe this. Like, she says herself, she's not in her 20s. She's not trying to be an influencer. And I definitely think there's people on this cast who are here with ulterior motives. Brooke, Gia. Needless to say, Steve doesn't think that he's done anything wrong. He's rolling his eyes and saying that Rebecca is highly emotional, rude, and crude. I find him to be such a smug prick. He's trying to make her seem like a crazy person. And honestly, the real winner for this whole week and this episode is Steve's ex, because she's free of this douche. So there's been a lot of couples arguing and then having to move into separate apartments. And I'm wondering if they have 18 apartments available in case all of the couples implode. Mel and Luke are thriving in their separate apartment. That's what they needed. And they're actually talking to each other like human beings. Even more progress. Rachel is also in her own apartment now after the disastrous fantasy night. She seems absolutely devastated. And when they cut to Steve, this man is in a world of his own. He's just enjoying his coffee without a care in the world. So Rachel, she shows up to angrily pack her stuff. It's weird. She takes the cleaning supplies and toilet paper. At one point, Steven says happy birthday to her. And I just hope he was being weird and it isn't actually her birthday, because that is bleak. He steps out to give her some space because it's very awkward with all of her banging around. And Steven says that it would have been worse if he'd kissed her, and he can't force intimacy. Which I agree. I don't think he should be forced to kiss this woman or push it any further than what he's comfortable with, but I think he could have told her sooner. Sidebar, I am so impressed with Rachel's ability to take down a clothes horse. I grievously injure myself every time I do it. I never learn. Before we get to the men's workshop with Alessandra, we also see that Brooke said off camera. Again, where are the cameras? I need the cameras running more. So off camera, she said that she wants space from Chris and her own apartment. Case closed, she doesn't like this man. So in this men's workshop, they reflect on the fantasy evening. Scott, David, Philip and Danny loved their evenings, and there was good progress for Luke with Mel. Grayson talks about his weird question time with Julia. He feels like he's wasting his time and that he's attracted to her, but she needs to be brutally honest about where she stands. And Grayson can definitely empathize with Rachel when we see Steven talk about their car crash on fantasy night. I love Danny wearing his flat cap here. I did love when he said this. Men used to die in trenches and fight wars, and he's too scared to give his wife a kiss. I think Steven realizes that he screwed up in how he kind of handled all of this, and that he needs to be honest and sort these issues out with Rachel. Now Chris, he's just the saddest little boy. He feels such a connection with Brooke and says that he'd stay in the experiment all the way to the end. He's committed, but his audition tape has been such a roadblock for them, and he's feeling sorry for himself because he doesn't feel his affection is reciprocated and is hoping to change Brooke's mind. Good luck, Chris. I feel he's a bit delusional. I'm sure Brooke has not been the most upfront in terms of where he stands with her, but she clearly doesn't like him. Now, deep breaths. Woosah. We move on to Steve. I might have to be quick with this because I'm scared that I'm going to rage black out. So Steve is asked by Alessandra about Rebecca's fantasy and how she bought some outfits in a sex shop and she didn't end up putting them on out of respect for him, and he tries to say that it brought them closer. And my himbo, King Scott, is not here for Steve. And I love that someone actually finally confronts him from the men. Scott thinks Steve is full of shit and he only cares about himself. Yes, Scott, you're right. Steve talks about the fight they had, and Alessandra rightfully calls him out on why he stayed to work on it at the last commitment ceremony, and why he said he was attracted to her, because now he's kind of backtracking on that and giving some mumbo-jumbo about external and internal beauty. Alessandra, she is incredible throughout this workshop. She sees straight through this man and says he's skirting around her questions and trying to sound good. Now this asshole disagrees and says he doesn't have an earpiece in his ear and he's not waiting for someone to tell him what to say. I've never been more attracted to Alessandra than in this moment. Ugh. when she tells him to tread lightly, like she will fuck Steve up. And all the men are absolutely horrified by Steve. This man has no allies. Steve just keeps repeating okay and laughs and says he'd rather not say anymore and how he's being misinterpreted and that's making him withdraw. Now, I think he's realized that his mask has slipped and he doesn't like that he's coming across on TV as the piece of shit that he is. Steve afterwards says to producers that he didn't take in much what Alessandra was saying. I'm with Scott. When he said that how Steve spoke to Alessandra gives us some insight into what he's like with Rebecca, Steve needs to do some work on how he speaks to women. After the workshop, the men go back to tell their wives all the details, and Danny, what a babe, coming back with wine and gossip about the Steve and Alessandra fight. Scott, you can see he's visibly still raging and so pissed off afterwards. Gia, she's not shocked. She has Steve pegged. Isn't surprised at all because she says he's the kind of man that talks over women and likes to control situations, and the moment that he isn't in control, he loses it. Amen, Gia. That is exactly what just happened. Next, we see that Rebecca has moved back in, and she says that she feels she's respected Steve and that she's put in a lot more effort into this relationship. She talks some more about how she's been holding herself back because she's afraid she'll be too much for him. And this gremlin, he says, oh yeah, well, you're too much for me. He storms off, they get into a fight, he storms off, and he says to her, well, at least you can make TV gold now. He's a little bitch. His big age acting like this, pathetic. So Alessandra also gave some covert tasks for the men to perform for their wives. We see David stripping and offering his cleaning services to Alyssa. Now, I enjoyed watching this because it looked like this man had never cleaned before. He made me absolutely wretched when he called the little kind of pinny smock thing that he was wearing a baby making gown, and I hate that. I hate when people say baby making. I hate when people call sperm baby batter. Just, ugh. Anyway, they seem happy, and she squeezes his big titties, and he loves it. Mel and Luke have also been given their own separate task. So these two are basically, they're in lower set, and they need some extra tutoring. Their task is to build up their trust and physical intimacy slowly. So how they're explaining this is basically what they tell people when approaching a horse so that they don't spook them. They have to do an eye gaze for 3 minutes, and weirdly, I think I was first introduced to this exercise through The Big Bang Theory. I'm pretty sure that Sheldon and Penny do it. Then they have to do a 3-minute hug, and they do very well. And I'm proud of these two, but I am starting to agree with Mel that I'm starting to think they look related. When I had a look at them staring into each other's eyes, I started to see a similarity. So next, Stephen is trying to make amends and bring some roses to Rachel's apartment, which is a very sweet move because she loves flowers. Personally, I don't care for flowers. I find them too expensive, and you could buy me a week's food shop for that price. Throughout this, all I could really focus on is how much Rachel looks like Dobby from Peep Show. If you haven't seen it, Google it. I think they look very alike. They have very similar eyes. But Stephen apologizes and wishes he could have done things differently on Fantasy Night. And Rachel moves back in with him, and she seems like a very forgiving person. I feel these two can always bounce back pretty quickly after an argument. And these two are also in Alessandra's special school with Mel and Luke, and they're given their own task of sharing a long, passionate kiss. They have an option to make it 3 minutes if they want to. That sounds horrific. They don't choose that option, but they do have a full makeout. And I must say, Rachel is resilient. I couldn't have bounced back to kissing him after what happened on her Fantasy Night. We finished the episode with Brooke and Chris. He sets up a really nice spa night for her with bubble bath, face mask, and champagne. And at first I thought this was really nice because I thought this was just a treat for her. But then I noticed there's 2 glasses. There's going to be a bath for 2. And this woman is almost 6 foot. She can't be sharing that tiny bath. Plus she hates him. She doesn't want to. Brooke says she feels smothered, uncomfortable, and needs space. And we learn that off camera, Brooke has decided to leave the experiment. And we see Chris. He's just so sad this week. We just see him staring sadly out the window, and it looks exactly like that scene from Friends with Joey when he moves into his own apartment away from Chandler and he's just staring out that window. I've really gone on a journey with Chris, but I do feel like I've seen growth and respect, and he has taken some accountability for his disgusting audition video. I do question how much of this growth we would have seen if they had matched him with a model. I'm kind of liking that he was the one getting rejected, because I feel he would have been horrific if he'd been matched with someone who he didn't deem attractive enough. Okay, now I'm getting excited. Also scared, because we're getting onto the dinner party. So we start with seeing a bunch of the looks and everyone getting ready for the dinner party. Now, Stella, she's not my favorite dresser. She's dressed like an ice skater. Alyssa looks absolutely stunning. She looks like a golden age of Hollywood movie star. I think she'd make a great silent film actress. She has very expressive eyes. Mel is dressed like a sexy mummy, like Tutankhamun. Luke reckons she could be the best dressed today. Okay, Luke. Let me and my very questionable taste be the judge of that. I've been ranking each dinner party outfit on Instagram, so find me there at PopMonsterPod so you can tell me how wrong I was with my rankings. Rachel, she looks incredible, and I am so jealous of her ability to pull off a red lip. It looks flawless. I've done so many of those quizzes to find out what specific type of red suits me, because everyone's supposed to have their own type of red. But every time I look like that gremlin from the movie franchise Gremlins with the lipstick on. Hideous. So Rebecca and Steve are still in their separate apartments. They do a lot of filming with Rebecca alone in this apartment. It's pretty bleak. It looks like one of those adverts they do for life insurance, like where the family is really struggling after a loss because dad didn't get life insurance. Needless to say, she looks miserable. Gia is sad to lose her ally, Brooke. She says Brooke was her right-hand woman and she feels less confident without Brooke to back her up. And I think this is pathetic. I don't like this friendship. And Brooke is very much Gia's Regina George. Now, going into this dinner party, Beck is feeling very self-assured that she and Danny are the strongest couple and they've got each other's backs. So these are famous last words. So we see Chris, he'll be riding solo, like Jason Derulo, into the dinner party. And we get some really bone-chilling footage of Chris basically having a meltdown in the back of the car. He's covering the cameras and wants to go home. I feel like they've shot this like horror movie found footage. I felt so bad for Chris. I can really see the producer's strings throughout all of this. I feel like he asked to go home and these producers are forcing this guy to be here when he wants to leave. Brooke has already left. Gia is also suffering without Brooke and she needs to regroup, strategize, and gain some allies quickly. So she needs to clear the air with Beck. And these two come together, Avengers Endgame style, against a greater evil. Now this is where they lost me. They have a common hatred of Alyssa and Stella. Now, I was ready to cheer these two on for coming together because I thought their target was Steve. But Alyssa and Stella, this is just so unnecessary. In an M. Night Shyamalan style twist, we are learning for the first time, 3 weeks, mind you, into the show, that Beck kind of knows Alyssa from Adelaide. They run in similar circles and there's some tension there. And why is this our first time hearing about this? Next, we have Julia and Grayson enter the party, and she is dressed up like a gift bag. And Grayson says they're back on track, but I'm not convinced. And I don't ever comment, really, on the men's fashions, because it's just too dull. And at this dinner party, I thought there would be a lot bigger focus on Steve. I honestly would have preferred to see this, and to get some focus on some different couples. But Steve manages to slip below the radar because Brooke just completely monopolizes this whole event. I'll get to that later. But Rebecca looks stunning and she's very emotional and triggered by Steve leaving her after the fight. She says her biggest fear was being left. And again, Rebecca, I do like how she's being backed up by Gia and Scott. So when Steve slivers into the party, and to be fair to him, this would be my worst nightmare, he gets a very lukewarm greeting. Very few people stand up for him, and it's very uncomfortable. I get such bad secondhand embarrassment, and I'm so awkward that I know in this scenario I would be fake as fuck and getting up to greet the social pariah because I couldn't sit in that tension. Steve does make the effort to greet Rebecca, but it's very generic, and she's upset because she is owed a side chat to try and find some peace with him. This doesn't end well for them. Steve ends up storming off because he says that Rebecca's yelling at him. We don't get any kind of resolution with these two. The next episode will be a commitment ceremony, and I have this terrible fear that Steve will say leave and Rebecca will say stay. I don't think there's any coming back for these two. They should just leave at this point. We hear Chris attempt to enter the dinner party, and it's terrifying. We just get audio here. We just hear it, and we don't get to see what's going on. But I pictured it like Hannibal Lecter in his cage in Silence of the Lambs. This man is crying. He's having a full breakdown. He's just completely defeated. We see the producers trying to manipulate him on how important it is for society or whatever to show male emotions and to show this on this platform. And they're full of shit. They just want camera time from this man when he's at his lowest. So when Chris finally does make it to the dining room, everyone stands up and applauds him, which I think he really needed that. This man is hanging on by a thread. Eventually, we get an unexpected arrival from Brooke. She has her full Emma Roberts, American Horror Story, surprise bitches moment. Now, throughout this whole dinner party, she is a diabolical, thirsty monster. But on a shallow note, I must say that she looks fantastic in red, and this is her Diana's revenge dress. I felt so terrible for Steve throughout this. Brooke just didn't consider at all how her showing up would impact him. I really hated to see him getting hopeful that she changed her mind, only to get more resigned when he realized she was just there to make it into a MAFS Best Dinner Party Fights compilation. And he realizes his feelings towards her aren't reciprocated. Now, the rest of this dinner party is taken over by what I call a 3-round Brooke fight with alternating opponents. I'm someone who loves watching fights. I watch a lot of Real Housewives, I love the drama, but I am not entertained by the way Brooke does conflict. She just isn't smart with it. She just has such a juvenile way of fighting, and it's so one-sided, and it is bullying. She's just targeting people who she thinks are easy targets. It's pathetic, and I was getting really pissed off at Gia for being her minion, and Beck for piping in as well. Anyway, let's get into it. So round 1 is Brooke versus Stella. Brooke wants to know what Stella's problem with her is, and why she decided to come specifically at her at the commitment ceremony, and tried to make her look bad in front of the experts. I don't even want to repeat the childish shit that Brooke is saying, some stuff about stripper boots. It's bringing back high school trauma, and every word that comes out of her mouth makes her look more and more pathetic, and she can't get Stella to reduce herself to her level. Stella is playing this so smart. She just stays strong, quiet, and she's sat there like a mob boss. Sometimes you can really hold the most power by being quiet. She really shuts her up when she says, "Do you notice how much time you've been talking and I haven't said a word?" Brooke definitely underestimated Stella. Stella really takes control of the situation, and she goes to Brooke. She does an aside and asks her if she wants to go and have a one-on-one chat, which Brooke says no to. Because this isn't about Stella. This is about Brooke trying to domineer this whole dinner party and have all the attention on her. And I must say, winner of this episode was definitely Stella. I was so impressed with how she carried herself and her ability to just sit there and be cool. I'm very conflict averse, but I would be finding it impossible to not throw one of my stripper boots at Brooke's head. So we get into round 2 as Brooke realizes she's out of her league with Stella. So as Alyssa tries to defend Stella, Brooke says, "Shut up, Alyssa, you ratchet idiot." And Alyssa isn't just getting it from Brooke. Brooke, Gia, and Beck are all aiming fire at Alyssa, saying that she rolls her eyes and how she has a fake relationship. And I love how much David supported her, and he really has her back. I need Brooke to leave. I don't see what she's adding at this point. I can't stand her manufactured drama. She's obviously done with Chris. It just feels so fake. Everyone at the table is just so fed up with this. It just completely derails the dinner party. We have Grace in trying to calm down the situation. Stephen calls it bullying, and you can see he's having some war flashbacks while watching Brooke's behavior. In the end, I felt so hurt for Alyssa, seeing her in tears. I love what she said about not being everyone's cup of tea. Yes, she is theatrical and painfully chipper, but that's just her, and if you don't like it, then fuck off. So Alyssa is really doing her best to ignore Brooke, who's just yelling out her name. And Brooke is not happy to not be getting the attention she wants. So that takes us to round 3, Brooke versus Danny. Like everyone else at the table, Danny is sick of listening to Brooke's bullshit and tells her to be quiet and let someone else speak. Brooke calls him a Temu Conor McGregor. And I should have clocked their visual similarity sooner, but Conor McGregor is someone I try to avoid thinking of at all costs, so I didn't pick up on that. They go back and forth with each other on whether they're giving 100% in their relationships, and Brooke is only too happy to pick up the talking spoon and announce that Danny shouldn't be speaking to her like this because she heard something at the weekend that's a mic drop moment, but she won't bring it up because she doesn't want to ruin him. Now, on this rumor, where I stand, as of this week is I am leaning towards it being true based on Gia's reaction and her feeling some remorse about how this is coming out. So naturally, Beck wants to know, and Danny, he just looks like a lobster. So we find out that according to Gia, that when Danny was drunk, he said, "I'm happy, but in the outside world, someone like you would be more my type." It's worth noting that Brooke is also saying she was there. Now, Beck is very torn here because up until an hour ago, her and Gia were mortal enemies, but she does have some trust issues with Danny and his wandering eyes. Throughout this, Beck looks like a puppy being torn between two owners. So Beck has a quiet aside with Danny to get some clarity on whether he'd actually said this. Danny's not entertaining this. He immediately shuts it down. And I really do hope that this is some awful bullshit that Gia and Brooke have made up. Because if not, then Danny's being so manipulative by saying things like, oh, he has so much love for her and it would hurt him if she believed it. And I want to ride or die, not any old skank at a table can say something about me and you believe it. So I found it very manipulative. There's a bit of back and forth where Danny's telling Gia to shut her mouth. Gia is calling him a gaslighter. And this triggers Beck's inner golem / Peggy Mitchell to come out, and she fully loses it and yells, "Don't fucking come for my husband." So Beck has to leave this table. This is all too much for her. And I completely agree with her when she said that Gia and Brooke should have told her about this straight away and not save it as a bomb for the dinner party. It feels like Brooke was trying to humiliate Beck, or she's at least collateral damage in the fight with Danny, and they just don't consider how it would impact her. So we close with Danny fully denying, even saying that to Gia. Mel saying that she never heard it. And Danny is not sure if he wants to rectify his relationship. So that was week 3 of MAFS Australia. And it was a lot, but I am excited to see what the repercussions will be next time. Now, before I go, I do have some quick recommendations. So my first one here, and I promise I don't work for HeyU. I know I keep recommending shows that are on their streaming service, but I feel I have to make a public service announcement for people to watch Southern Hospitality if you're not already. The 3rd season, it's just a few episodes in, it's recently started, but I would say the first 2 seasons are essential viewing and a pretty quick watch. These people are unhinged. If you've ever worked in hospitality, if you enjoyed the messy early days of Thunderpump Rules, you need to be watching this. My second recommendation is on new music. So something that I've started doing is going through Apple's top 100 albums and listening to a new one every week. So I've been listening to so many new albums on my walk. Something that I've started listening to this week, I've only really given it one listen, so I definitely need to give it more time, is Ray's new album. Now, I'm a huge Ray fan. I loved her last album. I don't know yet how I feel about this one. I find it a little bit musical theater, but I think that could change the more that I listen to it. Maybe I just need to let it sink in. But yeah, I'd be interested to see what people think of her album. It sounds fantastic anyway. Her voice is incredible. So hopefully you guys like this episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked what you heard here, please subscribe for future MAFS episodes, artist discographies, book chat, and pop culture deep dives. And you can also find me on Instagram at PopMonsterPod. You can find me on both Apple Music and Spotify as Pop Monster. And if you enjoy this episode, please follow the podcast and consider leaving a review. It really helps new people find the podcast. DM me on Instagram if you have any ideas for things you'd like me to cover in future episodes. And thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.